Well, Egypt is among non-BRICS countries that have been invited by Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend this year's summit in China. The country has close economic and political ties with three of the union's members, namely China, India and Russia. Yasser Hakim looks at what the Egyptian president is expected to discuss at the summit.
Egypt is the only Arab state to be invited to the BRICS summit so far. It's a sign of the strong relationship with China, since both sides signed a strategic partnership agreement in Beijing in 2014.
China strongly supports Egypt as a strategic ally by inviting it to such major economic events and gatherings. China personally invited Egypt to the G20 summit. Egypt was active in the summit, which opened a lot of doors for economic relationships.
Egypt is also a leading partner in the Belt and Road Initiative, and it can play a major role in linking up BRICS' global trade.
We are the center of the world because we are signatories to the COMESA, another fantastic regulatory economic unity on the African continent. And we're trying to expand that and be part of a greater Africa as well. We're part of the GAFTA and the PAFTA with the Middle East. We're part of the association agreement with Europe. We've got the QIZ protocol with the United States of America. We've got a free trade agreement with Turkey. We are part of a lot of other of these international agreements.
China has proposed the BRICS Plus that could pave the way for other nations to join in. The Egyptian president might capitalize on this, as Cairo has been seeking to become a member before. Apart from the economic aspect, India wants to discuss the counter-terrorism efforts at the summit. India wants the BRICS to launch an anti-terrorism convention at the UN. Egypt itself is in a war on terrorism, so it would very much welcome such a move.
It is happening again now as China invites Egypt, this time to attend the BRICS and open new venues for the country's economy. Egypt always calls for cutting financial and logistical support to terrorist groups. Terrorism does not spread by thought only, but it needs funding which is provided by several nations. That has to be stopped.
According to experts here, Egypt attending the BRICS this year could have a significant impact on its economic and political development. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, CGTN's Uche Okoronkwo is at the summit. She's joining me now from Yemen. Uche, since the BRICS inception, how have the union's goals been affected, particularly in regard with how some of its members are going through rough economic and political times?
Well, thanks, Beatrice. Well, there have certainly been questions about the effectiveness of the group, given the fact that we have seen subdued economic progress from BRICS nations in the past decade. However, it's not an entirely negative picture going forward. China's economy has continued its steady expansion so far this year. Its GDP was up about 6.9% in the first half of 2017. Russia and Brazil did suffer recessions in recent years, but both economies have been growing so far this year. Now, Russia saw growth of about 2.5% in the first half, and Brazil saw growth pick up to about 1%, and that was after 2 years of steady declines. Now, South Africa is perhaps the biggest worry for the BRICS nations. Domestic growth in the country has weakened with a surprise GDP contraction in the first quarter of 2017. Now, the central bank there also revised down its growth forecast for 2017 to 0.5%, down from about 1%. However, many do agree that politically South Africa is still very important to the BRICS countries, being one of Africa's more developed nations, and of course given its role as a gateway to the continent. Now, despite all this, the BRICS countries are still a major driving force in the global economy. As we heard earlier, the fact is they make up about 44% of the world's population. They account for nearly 1/4 of global economic output and about half of world economic growth. Economists also still agree that BRICS countries are playing an increasingly important role in trade globally, not only driving regional growth, but also helping to lift the global economy. Now, BRICS took up about 23% of global GDP in 2016, and that's why they're still quite important. Beatrice.
Well, yes, Uche, now South Africa is the only African member of the BRICS grouping, but Egypt has also been invited to this summit this year. Talk us through the country's relationship with the BRICS.
And Beatrice, as we heard Yasser say earlier, it's one of the few Arab states that were invited by China, and it has certainly expressed interest in becoming a member of the BRICS group in the past. Now, the country was once touted as a better candidate than South Africa, but that was when it was expected not only to grow faster than South Africa over the next 10 years, but to overtake it as Africa's largest economy. But that has not been the case, as we have seen so far. Political instability, as well as foreign exchange shortages in the country, its high levels of public debt, and certainly a ballooning fiscal deficit have not left it in good standing when it comes to being a BRICS member. It has taken on an IMF program that has improved its economic situation, but until it overcomes its current economic difficulties and certainly starts to build a stable political system, an environment that encourages foreign direct investment, that decision still remains up in the air. Beatrice.
All right, Uche Okronko for us there from Xiamen at the summit. Thank you.